What's up, everybody? Coach Stefan here. I'm on with Steven. Do you mind introducing yourself, just giving the audience like a little bit of background on who you are, and then we'll dive in, man.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. So my name is Stephen Weatherill. I am an Air Force veteran. I was 6 years security forces up until 2012. So it's been a little bit, but have a little bit of that training in my background. I am now for the majority, a stay-at-home dad. I do work part-time with my wife at home, but we've got three little kids, and so they keep me busy. But Generally athletic, been playing a ton of sports since I was a little kid, just recreationally, just love staying active. And just like to keep moving. And plus the three kids, it's hard to sit still.
Yeah, yeah, cool. Well, go Air Force, first of all. Uh, if you guys don't know, I was Air Force back 5 years. I got out in 2015. You said 16 is when you got?
2012.
Oh, 12. Okay, so you've been out longer than me.
Yeah,
This stuff feels like a lifetime ago.
it does.
But yeah, I mean, you're a busy dad. My wife's staying home with one, and I'm like, I don't know, 83. It's like, but you're doing it, you're making it work. And I know it can be really hard. Kids throw a wrench in it, right? Not in a bad way. It's other things you have going on. And it's really easy to just be like, I'm busy. I'm putting my kids first. I'm putting work first, especially as a man. You're like, hey, I'm doing this thing. I'm in charge. I'm supposed to provide, but we forget about ourselves. Sometimes I see it a lot. And so walk me through where you were, because your scenario is a little bit different when you came to us, right? It wasn't like, oh, I have 50 pounds to lose and I have this goal. Like, walk me through where you were when you first came to Pursuit.
Yeah, I was physically broken. I had suffered a motorcycle incident almost a year ago now. It's like July 3rd. And I dislocated my shoulder with like a small fracture kind of up here at the top of the bone. And then I had a pretty gnarly foot break where I broke like 3 or 4 metatarsal in my left foot. So I was on the couch in bed for the better part of 5 to 6 weeks. And I had seen Mike in and out of the gym because I had gone to the gym that he was at
Yeah.
privately, just on my own. And I just was listening. I was always tuning in, just trying to like scan the area and just see what he was talking about. And I just loved what he was sharing, how he was teaching his clients. And I was already in the middle of a program prior to my injury, so I didn't have any motivation to jump over to Pursuit. And Mike never came to me and was like, hey, you should come work with me. Whatever you're doing isn't working. Like, he was really helpful with the things that I was doing outside of Pursuit. So it was really neat that he didn't see anything as like competition. So then as I was broken, I was sitting there going, man, I've got to figure out a safe and effective way to rebuild the strength that I lost, because I had a ton of atrophy on my left side.
Oh, yeah.
My shirts were starting to fit smaller. I could see it from the left side down, leg, shoulder, chest, everything. So I approached Mike and I said, hey, like, what does it look like to slowly build me back up? And he goes, we can do it. Like, let's work together with your physical therapist. You and Mike both got on a call and got my kind of report cards from the physical therapist and knew where I was progressing in my healing. And you guys catered a program towards building up that strength. And I had told Mike, I said, hey, I've always been tall, lean, skinny. I've had a really hard time increasing weight and then also putting on muscle. So that's kind of my biggest goal, is I want to get stronger. I want to put more weight on the barbell in every aspect. So let's work there. And so for the first like 4 months, he just slowly progressed me into a rehab style strength training. And then it was up to me. And I said, hey, Mike, I'm feeling pretty good. Like, can we move away from this like rehab stuff? And can we move into more of like your specialty of like conjugate hybrid calisthenic type thing, like full body? He goes, yeah, let's turn it up. And he literally flipped the switch on my program. And then when he did that, I took a full body scan and measured my lean mass muscle. I was about 174 pounds at the time. And then I just measured it last month and I'm up at 187 pounds now,
Oh, wow.
which is 10 pounds of lean muscle according to this body scan, and have seen personal records and 1 rep maxes just fly through the roof.
Yeah.
And I just keep getting stronger almost every single month. Like
That's
everything is breaking, and I just can't get enough of it. It's been a blast.
yeah, that's awesome, man. And I know that we do have clients that come through. I mean, your injury was bad, right? Some people we have like firefighters and cops. They're like, I got beat up. Some people are like, I got shot in the foot. So some, all sorts of stuff like injuries, and you do need to take a different approach, right? Like I always will say, like, well, we have to stay in our scope of practice. So definitely, post surgery or post like terrible injury, go see a physical therapist. Maybe go see the chiropractor, like see what they say, somebody with a doctorate, see what your PCP says. But like after that, I think a big thing is people don't really know where to go from there. And when I worked in physical therapy a little bit too, just as a tech, but actually my old physical therapist is in our program. And so it's one of those things where it's like you get to a certain point, but then usually they're like, well, go do your exercise at home. Well, nobody does them, most people. And then at some point they're like, well, we can't keep seeing you because your insurance will cut you off. And even if you go through all of it, it's like, okay, have fun. What do? Just go back to, what you were doing before, which was like functional bodybuilding. And you could have, but it sounds like in your scenario, you needed something a little more tailored, right? And I'm glad you found Mike because he is very, very knowledgeable. All of our coaches are, but Mike does specialize in really knowing the human anatomy and understanding what to do. And I like the style of training that we do too. Like what he's doing with you, we actually do with a lot of our tactical athletes because they want to be fast, strong, explosive, mobile. Because I know for you, you're like, I want to stay athletic, but I'd like to gain some muscle and hit some PRs. And it sounds like you're keeping your athleticism, right?
Yeah.
You're keeping lean, you're getting stronger. I'm sure your mobility and flexibility has increased, right?
Yeah. It
Uh,
has.
so, I mean, it sounds like you're firing on all cylinders. Prior to working with Mike in Pursuit, have you ever worked with like an online coach, like one-on-one before, or is this kind of your first experience?
It's my first experience with a physical one-on-one coach. Obviously, I was with Mike in person for a little bit, but prior to that, I was just buying some of the let's call them cookie cutter programs
Yeah.
from some of the bigger name fitness influencers in the space.
Yep.
Very reputable, incredibly smart, very intelligent, very science based, if you want to call it. They were not just like some guys off the street. Like I kind
Yeah.
of vetted them. I made
Yeah.
sure that they were getting results with their other clients, and I jumped into them, and I enjoyed every single bit of it. But as I was just mentioning to a chiropractor last week, I said I wanted to see strength gains, and I did with those programs. Don't get me wrong, but the the bell curve that has increased since working with Mike on strength, it probably for the first 4 or 5 years of my fitness journey was a real slow bell curve. This one is more like this big hockey stick.
Yeah.
And I attribute it just to the way that he thinks about loading the body, and he's not afraid to get you to feel confident about putting more weight on the bar and doing it safely. It's something that I didn't know about doing. He's taught me so many small little tricks on how the body works when you load, and doing that has been a huge difference because he's the one in the app, he's the one in my program hearing my feedback, dialing it into where I need to see growth, or I want to see growth. Like he's never been afraid, or he's never been opposed to me saying, hey, like Mike, I'm not a huge fan of this exercise, can we adjust somewhere? Yep, sure, boom. I didn't have that in the past because the
Yeah.
programs that I had worked with in the past were run by like a team of coaches. Like I would get like 4 or 5 responses from different people, and I'd have to explain to them my story, explain to them my progress. Mike has known what I looked like when I walked in with a limp and with a shoulder that didn't move past like this. And now I'm full
Yeah.
mobility.
Yeah.
So Mike has seen it. He knows where I can go. He knows where I can push. And I don't think that I was really ever going to get that from somebody else other than in semi in person and obviously one-on-one online.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you saying that. And I'll piggyback off that and say, like you said, we're not the only, I mean, there's good coaches out there. Okay. It's the industry is big. And, for some time, and I told you this when you told me the program, like, yeah, that's a solid program that you're following. Like I've done that guy's program before too, really reputable, but like there's also, it's just different, right? Like that could maybe even work for people that are, I mean, I think the cookie cutter is like, if you're already pretty fit, you just need something fresh, like go for it. But you do hit a wall where you run through a couple of those and you're like, okay, I'm kind of like making a little bit of progress. Like you said, slow bell curve, and you have to jump from thing to thing. And I always tell people that are a little more advanced, like you were, even though, excuse me, even though you had the injury, you've been lifting for years and years and years, right? Pretty self-sufficient. But it's like if you were to just let somebody kind of dive in and show you a new way of lifting and stuff and like shock your body a little bit, then you can take that knowledge and continue to use it. Cause I will tell everybody like one-on-one high level online coaching is not a forever thing. You know, it's like, let's get you built up. Let's get you to build the muscle, hit PRs, understand all the nuances that you maybe didn't know before that Mike's taught you, understand and dial in nutrition a little bit more, which I know you had a really good base on nutrition, but like, let's figure all that out. And then as you progress, you become more self-sufficient, less accountability with your coach, more like, hey, now you're just following in the app. And then it ends up becoming kind of like what you were doing before. Like, hey, you just need the program, but we have to start with the knowledge and we have to start building somebody up, even if they're not coming in with an injury, but like, especially if they're coming in with an injury. Um, so I guess my last two things. There's number one, like, how's the customer service been? Because that is the number one thing I hear with people that are thinking about doing online or they've done online is like, my coach won't get back to me. They won't customize it to me. Or I've heard horror stories of like, yeah, I had his coach and they emailed me my workouts and I heard from him once a month and it was on a Google Doc. And I'm like, oh God. So how's like that whole experience been using the app and communicating with the coach? And
It's been great. I mean, I've emailed and texted with Mike via the app and also sometimes privately. And respectfully, he's more responsive within the app. He keeps it very professional to where he doesn't necessarily respond outside of that app, which I enjoy because I want to see him obviously be divided with his personal time and his professional time. So I know where to reach him. If I want him to respond quickly, I go to the app and he responds to the app. He's very engaged. I think just like 2 weeks ago, he had messaged me and goes, "Hey, I actually haven't heard from you. You haven't really commented on anything that you've been doing. Is everything good? Is everything all right?" And I had been traveling. I'd been out of the city for vacation and stuff like that. So I had missed, a handful of workouts and things like that. So he wanted to check in. So I could tell that he was paying attention. I could tell that he knew my level of communication, which is
yep.
very high. And once he started to recognize that it wasn't there, he just had that like instinct of him and said, "Hey, let's check in with Steven and make sure he's doing all right."
Yeah.
As for like tailoring it and just like adjusting things, I try to lean on him for the expertise. So I don't necessarily say, "Hey, this exercise is better for me," because I'm still wanting to learn because his style of exercise is so different than what I'm used to. So I'm still in the infant stage of learning. So I don't necessarily push a ton of things of like, "Hey, can you actually do this because it's better for me?" He's teaching me a little bit more on what I am capable of and what's good and optimal for my program. So every now and then I'll just ask him like form questions. I'll send him a video and I'll say, "Hey, what do you think of this?" And he'll tweak it here. And he spends the time. Like he doesn't necessarily just push me off. He really tries to figure out where I can get better, adjust and exercise form wise, weight wise. And also the last customer service thing is he's encouraging, man. I was always in the mindset of like, if you're not upping the weight or if you're not necessarily hitting the mark that you set personally, then you're essentially like not a failure. You're just like, you just missed it. You're not
Yeah.
optimal.
Yeah.
Mike told me months ago, he goes, "Small weights are big wins." And what that meant to me was like, hey, if you can't hit 300 on your squat, what if you take these tiny little baby weights, these half pound or these 1 pound weights and hit 302? Okay, let's try it. And I get 302 up. He's like, "Sweet. Is that a PR?" "Yeah." "Great. So don't worry about 305. You just PR'd at 302. And
Yeah.
so he has a really nice way of just being encouraging and saying, like, don't get discouraged if you can't hit the 305. Focus and recognize that you actually did something well and you
Yep.
succeeded. And I was like, all right. So that's encouraging because now that I don't see him in person, there's times where I like push myself too far and I miss that weight. But I remember in the back of my mind, I'm like, wait a second, I did just PR this like seventh set. So who cares if I don't get the eighth? I already
Yeah.
crushed it. So
Yeah.
it's been great.
Yeah, that's awesome. Especially the longer you've been lifting, like you don't, in general, you don't have weekly big wins, right? Like it's law of diminishing returns. The longer you've been lifting, like you're not hitting these 10-pound PRs, like it's small and you got to work really hard for it. And so, that's cool that he's giving you a little bit of different framework and mindset and understanding. And it's cool. I mean, we work with people from, as you know, all spectrums, beginners, intermediate, advanced, super advanced. And so it's cool to hear people that have years of lifting experience under their belt kind of come in and, I don't know if you were in this boat, but I think too, I've been in times in my career where I'm like, I kind of know enough. Like I know everything, I'm good. And then, we get like new methods to lifting or new, and I'm like, wow, I didn't know anything, and Mike has taught me a lot. And one of our other coaches, Ryan, like chatting with him, I'm like, so it's cool that, with all of our coaches too, a little back thing we do is we meet every week and we kind of talk about different ideas and ideologies and sharing stuff. Cause then we got years and years and years of like knowledge and coaching experience that we're all learning from each other. So I'm glad you're a sponge. That's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're very coachable, and that's going to go a long way, man. You've already had amazing progress. I think a hard thing to do, if I will be the first to admit, is like me, is to come in and like completely let down your pride and be like, I'm an open book. I'm a sponge. Like, teach me. Especially when you have a lot of experience, but it's gone really well for you. You've gained a ton of muscle. You've totally rehabbed your body. So I'm super confident that you're going to continue to make success, man. And you're crushing it with online, and it seems like it's going really well. My last thing, and I'll let you go, I know we've been chatting for a while, is if you had somebody else that was kind of maybe in your position and they were on the fence, like, I don't know if I want to like invest in coaching or work with Pursuit, or will the whole online thing work for me? I've done some other programs. Like, what would you say to that person?
Oh my gosh.
No, it's a big question.
Get a knife, take your humble pie, throw the knife out and eat the whole thing. Like, just recognize that fitness looks and feels different for everybody. Like the story that, okay, the person that comes to mind is one of Mike's clients. This individual is 65 years old. And I see this individual in the gym every day. And they have set PRs since before I started with Mike. I've seen the growth with this person. This individual just wanted to be fit again. And I see that person in the gym and I'm like, if Mike is able to help that person and somebody's in my shoes, they're 36, they're relatively in shape, but they think that they don't need the trainer, they don't want the trainer, like just give it a shot. Like just let your guard down, let Mike, let Stefan, let whoever your coach is going to be in Pursuit to just let them teach you. I really appreciate the sentiment of being a sponge and being humble and coachable. And that's what I would ask is just don't be so prideful. You're not the smartest person in the room. Don't think that you are. You said it yourself. You bring in your team and each of you shares your strengths and your weaknesses so that your entire team knows that each of you is not the smartest person, that you have to learn from Mike. You have to learn from Bryce. You have to learn from everybody on the team. So let the coaches coach you and just see where it can take you. And trust. That's the biggest thing. If you're going to jump in, trust the individual, try not to second guess them and let them push you. There's a handful of memories that come to mind with Mike where he was kind of tricking me into an exercise and he was like, all right, we're going to do 4 more. I was like, okay, cool. And I do 4 more reps. He's like, all right, boom, 2 more reps. By the time I was done, I think he'd initially programmed me to do like a burnout of like 40. He's like, oh, well, we got to 62. And I'm like, no wonder I can't walk away from this Smith machine. But the story behind that, like, I guess the foundation behind that is just like, trust the guy. Like, he's not going to push you to where you're going to hurt yourself. Mike told me many times, I was like, hey, Mike, dead hangs on a shoulder for my shoulder right now. I can't do them. He's like, all right, put some resistance bands underneath you. Let's lighten the load. Let's adjust it. And he listened to me when I told him that it was painful. And so he's not going to be like, oh, no pain, no gain. He's not going to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
arrogant like that. He's just going to let you go. So all in all, drop the pride, be humble, and trust the coaches. They're going to get you dialed in, and I think that would be the best thing for everybody.
Yeah, I love that, dude. You wrapped it up nicely and well said. And yeah, I mean, I try to be as much of a sponge. And even Mike, he's a super knowledgeable guy, but I think we all understand that there's a lot to learn and learn from our clients, right? It's why we have to be, coaching is so much more than like, I know this many sets and reps. And it's actually just being personable and like building a relationship with people, right? Like him knowing like, oh, this isn't the normal interaction from Steven, not like, oh, I did my check-in. Like, it's really being personable, and I'm a people person, so I'm on the coaches about like going a little bit above and beyond and kind of checking in, and so I'm really glad to hear that we're doing our job right. And
Yeah.
and we're over delivering. So cool, man. I really appreciate you jumping on. This is super helpful. I know whoever listens to this is going to kind of talk to them and speak to them individually, and I just appreciate your vulnerability and you sharing and your honest feedback, man. Keep crushing it. Keep being a sponge.
Yeah.
Enjoy the weekend with your family, and then we'll talk soon, okay?
All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you.